So risk tolerance is definitely something that we definitely talk about. Your emergency fund is going to be in an account that's going to be growing with interest. There are certain rules that you can maximize your foundation. So if you do get extra income, you want to maximize that foundation, make it solid. And then you have more income coming. If you have an account with money in it and that account is receiving 1% interest, it's going to take 72 years for your money to double. You come at me with $10,000, first thing I'm gonna ask you is, do you have an emergency account?
Hello everyone, welcome to the Lalwani Lounge. Today we have Daniela again with us. The last time we did talk a lot about financial freedom. If you haven't watched that episode, I will highly recommend you watch it. I will attach that link to the video. We all have this love and hate relationship with finances. In this episode, we're talking about the various ways and strategies that you can use to have a better financial future. So enjoy. Hey Daniel, welcome back. It's been a while since I've had you, and this is I'm glad we're doing another part to the finance series where last time we spoke about what are the questions that you were gonna ask to establish somebody's financial profile,
Right.
or financial biodata,
Correct.
before you start giving them advices.
Right.
So
very
I
important.
think in this episode, I want to cover what are some of the advices that you can give, what are some of the options that people have that they don't know about, some of the things that they may or may not understand about maybe tax laws, maybe, just like we did not know about death tax. So, stuff like that. So where would you like to start?
I guess it really just comes down to my service portfolio.
Okay.
Right? My service portfolio, my service itself, the point of my service, the purpose of my service is to really be able to service the client to become financially independent. We talked about that last time, right? So being able to achieve financial independence is very particular to each person for who they are as individuals. And so when it comes to my service portfolio, we spoke about income protection, your will, your budget, all of that, right? Which kind of sums down the protect, prepare for your future, right? Protect, prepare, and prevention. So that you can properly set yourself up, because yes, you can have savings, you can have investments, but if you're not properly prepared or properly set up, any kind of obstacle or what's the word I'm looking for? Any kind of obstacle, you would say,
Right.
any kind of obstacle that comes your way, adversity, that's the word. Any kind of adversity that is kind of brought your way will definitely make or break your plan, right? Is your plan ready for adversity or not, right? And so that's really what it comes down to. The before conversation we were having on prevention, preparation, protection. The now conversation is really more on the investments, right? What do people need to know, right? People need to know the importance of the rule of 72, which is how interest works. Just how interest works against us with credit cards and all of that fun stuff. It can also be used to work for us.
Just for context, can you tell me what the rule of 72 is?
Yes, the rule of 72 allows us, it's just a mathematical equation. It allows us to see how fast your money is going to duplicate depending on the interest, right?
Okay.
So for example, right, just an example, if you have an account with money in it doesn't matter the amount. If you have an account with money in it and that account is receiving 1% interest, it's going to take 72 years for your money to double, to duplicate.
Okay. Okay.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know. So think about the effect
I
that.
have a bank account with 0.05.
Right. That was about. That's what I was about to say.
My money's never gonna double.
Exactly. That's exactly the problem. Most people don't realize interest and how it really works, and so they just put their money in a bank. The bank's job is to provide you with a checkings and a savings. but their business is to make money off of your money, right? So what the bank does is the bank, they open a checkings and a savings account for you, and then they create these tiny little, really small letters and sentences and paragraphs and really their clause that pretty much you're allowing by accepting this checkings and accepting this savings account, you are allowing the bank to borrow your money. When the bank borrows your money, they put it into the global economy. In the global economy, your money grows with interest, right? And so that's where the interest the bank gives you comes from. They pay you 0.01, 0.02. Some banks will pay you 0.05% in interest, but that's not how much the interest they actually got. That's just the amount of interest they're paying you because you allowed them to borrow your money, right?
So basically, the idea is like we put our money in the banks take this money, invests it somewhere, makes money on it, and what I've read and heard, like at least there's a 10% growth on this money, and then we get 0.05% of that. And
Exactly.
the bank makes 99.95%.
Correct. Right. And so, right. And most people don't know that. Right. And so when it comes to saving money and when it comes to putting your money in the right places, you have to put it and understanding interest. Right. You have the ability to do what the bank does for yourself, but we don't know that.
So when you're saying this, like, so what you're recommending is like stuff like Robinhood or something that allows you to invest, or maybe like a 401k. No. Okay, so that's not something that you recommend. Okay.
Listen,
So, but
let me ask you a question,
Yes.
right? Let's say that you accidentally broke your arm,
Okay.
right? And so you know what a broken arm is. You know it's just a broken bone. You know what it is, right? Would you go to a professional to cast your arm, or would you cast it for yourself?
I'll probably go to a professional.
You probably go to a professional, right? And so there's something to be said about that. The professionals, they know the rules, they know how it works. And so when people try and go through Robinhood, for example, you can, sure, because it gives you a basic understanding or it exposes you to investing, sure, but you lack the knowledge behind the profession. And so I don't think I would personally ever endorse Robinhood or any of those kinds of websites.
Okay.
You always want to go to a professional because there is something to be said about the rules and how things work and vocabulary, right? So when it comes to the banks, the bank will invest your money, and like you said, they will give you 0.05%, right? Or 0.05%, and then they'll keep the rest. And so you as an individual, you have the ability to do that for yourself, but what they don't do is they don't teach you how to do it for yourself. Right. And so that's the part of the other side of the portfolio, right? The first part of the portfolio is protection, prevention, and preparation for your future. The other side of the portfolio has to do with multiplication and growth, right? You have to be able to know where to put your money so that it grows, right? So that it grows for you, so that it fights inflation, because inflation is a bitch. It's just, it is what it's going to be, And so if you do it for yourself, you very much can, but you're not going to know the ins and the outs of the industry. So you have to go through a professional. In my experience, it's the best scenario to go through, right? And when it comes to professionals are able to teach you the rule of 72, how the bank systems work, how to use that compound interest in your favor, right? And so we work with that in the sense of retirement accounts, emergency accounts, savings accounts, investing, short-term investing accounts, all of it. It just all comes down to your need and your your desired preference of action. Because I can build you and I can show you and I can teach you as much as I want, but none of it is going to matter if you don't do something about it.
Right. Do you also take like my risk tolerance into consideration?
Of course.
Like say, maybe I'm okay with putting maybe $5,000-$10,000 in some investments.
Of course.
But I don't like, I'm okay with losing that much money, but right. Okay, so you do take.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
When it comes to risk, naturally, I'm sure as you've heard, not just with your money, but with anything, right? The higher the risk, the better the reward.
Right.
Right? But what if you are just not that risky person?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. That's what the conversation is there for. It's my job to get to know you as an individual so that I know what you can do, what you're willing to do, and what you're absolutely not going to do. You, for example, right? You are someone that's very young. You're welcome. You're young enough is what I'm trying to say, right? You are someone that can take a moderate amount of risk because you have time in your favor. And that is something to be said about time. And time is something that we don't give back. We don't get back. Time is something that is highly underestimated. And time is something that kind of dictates everything else, right? And so when you're young, you have time. The older you get, the shorter that time frame starts to become. And I know that sounds scary and uncomfortable to talk about, but it's a fact.
Right.
And that's the thing with most people. Facts make them uncomfortable, which to each their own. But regardless of, you have time because you're still relatively so young, let's compare you to someone who's 47 touching those 50. Their time frame is much, much shorter. Therefore, their risk tolerance is much, much shorter. Now, let's say that you come to me and you're like, well, Danny, yes, I'm 55, but I have this amount, set up. And so my risk tolerance is a little different, right? Because their foundation is set, their risk it shifts, right? But when you don't have anything set up and you have come to an age where it's time to kind of start thinking about that. And it's funny how like maturity plays its part and youth and all of these things play their part in your money. But yeah, like risk tolerance is a very big thing when it comes to like how it is that you want to move. You could be super young and just because of how you were raised or because of your experience or because of whatever, you might not be so risk tolerant, right? Therefore, your returns might not be as high, but you have peace because you know that you're being, whether you're getting the best returns or not, that's not what brings you peace. What brings you peace is knowing that you're safe. And so risk tolerance is definitely something that we definitely talk about.
Okay. Is there, according to you, is there like a time where like, okay, for you to have optimal result, you should have started thinking about retirement by maybe like, is it, I know you're going to say like, as soon as you can, like.
As soon as you can is ideally. Yes, because time is time.
Right. But what would be like, okay,
That's
this is your cutoff limit.
Yeah.
Like the Goldilocks zone. Like after this, it's going to get.
You're kind of fucked up situation. Yes, now is the best time. But that is like that statement is accurate in the sense of you've never done anything before. And so now is the time, right? Regardless of your age. If you're 35, if you're 47, if you're 52, and you've never done anything towards your financial education or your financial plan, the answer is yes, now. Now is your time because time only keeps going and time never stops and you're losing time. And the thing about my industry is it's inevitable. Time doesn't stop. So either or is going to happen, right? And so the short answer is you're right, now, right? But not everybody is young or not everybody is old. So to me, what I've learned, just if people were out there trying to manage and trying to figure it out, I think the best time would be like between 25 and 30 is like that sweet spot.
Okay.
It's that sweet spot to where like you have time on your side. You have time to really figure out what you want. You have time. You've experienced certain things, right? And so now you've had time to develop yourself in your 20s towards experiences, things that you did want to do, things that you didn't want to do, things that you thought you were never going to do and then you did anyway, you know?
Right.
Which are the best times. However, there is always going to come, it's inevitable. There's always going to come a time in someone's life where their light bulb goes on, right? Where they're like, oh shit, I should probably start thinking about this, right? And so ideally as an individual, you want that time to be in between the ages of 25 and 30. Most people are like, oh, but in my 20s, like, I'm going to live my 20s up and my 30s are going to be great. And usually that's the case. But you go back and you service these people and they're like, dang, I wish I would have known this in my 20s. It's like, yeah, you really do, because it's that sweet spot. It's that sweet spot where time is on your side and aging is inevitable. So what are you going to do?
Right.
You know, for the people that are 45, 55, it's not impossible. It's not something you can't do. Your time frame is shorter, but it comes down to at that moment, it comes down to the attitude of the person. Okay. I can still help you. You can still help yourself, which is one of the biggest like keynotes. I can show you and I can teach you and I can service you, but I am worthless without your actions. Because listen, I'm good. I'm going to be good anyway. I've set myself up. I've taught myself. I've applied these concepts to me. Whether I help you or not, I'm going to be good anyway. But whether you take my knowledge and my suggestions and my experiencing into consideration or not, it's on you.
So then what's your motivation of helping people? So I see that you're saying that you're good, right?
Right.
So what's your motivation of getting into this industry, trying to help people with this financial knowledge that you've gained over the years?
Yeah.
What let's just put it this way, like what kicks you out of bed in the morning?
I got you. When I say I'm good, I mean in the sense that I've applied these concepts to myself because I've seen how they work and I understand that time needs time. You need time and consistency in order to grow your wealth, right? You have the exceptions, the people that win the lottery or the people that invent new things that are needed, so they're gonna explode, right? But for the most part, even new businesses, right? They need time and consistency to grow, right? And so what kind of gets me out of bed in the morning is just, it's knowing that like I did something for myself that I thought I was never going to be able to do. And so now I want to be able to help people that were in the same mindset, because everybody is in different positions, but they were in the same mindset. You know, for a really long time, I thought that, you know, I was going to be the same person that I was like born into, if you will. Like I was always going to be this person who was just super underprivileged, that was just super lacking knowledge, super lacking opportunity, just, you know, like, I don't mean to make it sound sad or anything, but like, you know, like adversity is a real thing that I had to like overcome, right? But when I learned certain things, while at first I was skeptical and while at first I was very cautious, even now I don't trust nobody, you know? But you need people. You need to trust people like with certain things that you don't know, right? And so when I learned these concepts, I was like, we'll see. And that we'll see turned into seeing, right? Because I was like, okay, we'll see. Let me study it more. Let me go. Let me do it. And the more I did it, the more I realized that these concepts weren't just something a company was trying to sell me on, but they were how the American economy works.
Okay.
Just basic financial American economic literature, right?
Okay.
Once I learned that, I started applying it to myself. So that's what I mean by I'm good. I am taking the proper steps to where I'm going. There will come a day where I'm gonna be good anyway, right? Because like I told you last time, it's your job to make sure that you make money. It's my job to make sure you keep your money, right? So in that sense,
What's your favorite sentence?
yo, your money, your income is your biggest wealth building tool. It's your biggest wealth, and it is your income, and it is because at the end of the day, like, it's what dictates your lifestyle.
Right.
You know? And so in that sense, like, I have applied the concepts to myself to where I'm good anyway. There will come a day, right? It's your job to make you money, right? Let's say that you end up being so successful and you make millions of dollars. Fantastic. You made millions of dollars and more, right? But let's say that you don't, like, while that was your intention, right? Because we all want to do our best. We all want to grow. We all want to, do all of these things. But it's also been a proven fact that it doesn't always work out for people, right? And so while it's your job to make you money, it's my job to make sure you keep it. So let's say you made $1 million and you were super successful. That's fantastic. Then you built that for yourself and you have a little more. But let's look at the alternative. The alternative is, yes, you tried to build your business. Yes, you tried to do all of these things, but it just didn't necessarily work out, or it worked out differently. So regardless of what you did, I got you. I set you up to, even if you didn't do what you originally wanted to do, there will come a day where you're going to be okay anyway. So that's what I mean in that sense. And getting up in the morning, I mean, I'm just a person. I'm just a person trying to figure life out, and what I have figured out, I'm just trying to share with people because it affected me in a positive way. And I know that it has to help other people because money isn't everything, but it's what dictates who you are and who you're gonna be compared to who you want to be.
So now that we have this basis, right, and we're going
Right.
to use the same example from the last episode
Yes.
where I'm making $100,000, I've saved $10,000, and I've reached out to you as my as my financial advisor, for lack of a better word. Like, you're going to help me through this process, right? So how do we start? Like, now you have all the information that you need from me. What would be the first steps that we take with the $10,000 I've already saved up with me?
Okay, so the very first steps we're going to look at is obviously, let's say you have these $10,000 saved up, right? We're going to look at your foundation. Your foundation consists of an emergency fund, a short-term savings, and a long-term savings account.
Okay.
Your your emergency fund, while all of these accounts work individually as their names dictate, emergency, short-term, long-term, right? They also work together in the sense of they protect each other, right? So for example, your emergency fund, let's say you have just $10,000. Your emergency fund is really, you want your emergency fund to be based off of 3 to 6 months worth of income.
Okay.
Right? Nothing less, because if anything less, then you're not going to have money for your emergency, right? But also nothing more, because anything more can be allocated to a better account that's growing with better interest for better things.
All right.
That's what I like to call your I want money. Your emergency fund is your I have to money.
So like needs versus wants.
Correct.
Okay.
We don't know when life is going to life, right? So we have to have a little bit, 3 to 6 months worth of income in case of whatever. That account protects your short-term savings. It protects your I want money, because just because life happened doesn't mean that you have to use your I want money. No. The idea is to have a little bit of money saved up for that in case it does happen, right? Now, your short-term savings are exactly what it sounds like. Savings between 3 to 10 years, right? These savings are things like your house, your car, your vacation, a baby, whatever life you want to hold, whatever life you want to save for, that's what that's there for. And then you have your long-term and investment accounts. And so your short-term savings protect your long-term and investment accounts from being touched.
Okay.
Why? Because let's say that your emergency turned out into a little bigger of an emergency. So now you have to use your short-term savings account. That's okay.
So you mean like a medical emergency or like
Any kind
a
of
car
emergency.
crash or like
Any emergency, yeah. I'm a very positive person, so I don't like to speak things into existence, right? But let's say you got like a flat tire. Let's say it's, we live in Atlanta. Let's say, then it's happened to me twice already. Let's say somebody breaks your window.
Right.
And they, for whatever reason, have to break both of them, like, I don't know if y'all know, but while it can be expensive for some people and it's just a window for other people, it's still tedious.
Right, for sure.
It's still money that you could have used for something else.
For you to get a new bag.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my preference, but I spend my money on food, honestly. I like to eat good. But you get the idea, right? And then there's your I want money. So your emergency fund protects you from having to touch your I want money for things that you don't want to pay, but you have to, right? And then your long-term investments is what you want to have because that's what's going to grow, right? So regardless of what happens, regardless of whether you use your emergency or not, whether you use your short-term savings or not, your long-term savings is what's going to really help you reach that financial independence in the sense that you've made a plan. You're going to be good anyway, right? Regardless of what's happened, because there are things in place to take care of whatever has happened since then. So in that sense, that's kind of how you want it to be set up. You come at me with $10,000. First thing I'm going to ask you is, do you have an emergency account? You make 100,000, right? So that's what, a month. It's like 5,000 a month, something like that. Dang.
7.
I got you.
So 10,000 a month for 10 months would be 100,000. But they're 12 months in a year.
Right. So 8,000. You're making $8,000 a month. We have to, an emergency account, for it to be properly funded, we have to have between 3 to 6 months worth of income saved. Because if your income is high, so are your needs.
Right. But it was the lifestyle also changes based on how much you make.
Naturally.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you want to be able to
should be
just
aside. Yeah.
aside. Just 24,000 sitting in an emergency fund that are just, it's there for that.
So in this example,
if not terribly, because you have 10K, and that's more than at least 50% of the people have out there. I know it sounds crazy, but unfortunately, it's the truth.
Okay.
You have 10K, and you're already up than most of the people you know. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so you come at me with 10K, right? So I'm going to tell you, okay, perfect. If we have $10,000, let's go ahead and start your emergency fund. Let's say between 5 to 6,000 of those dollars will go towards your emergency fund. Why only a portion of it? Because your emergency fund is going to be in an account that's going to be growing with interest. Right? So those 5K, those 6K will be growing with interest until they reach the 25K or more. But that's
so we don't start as like 25K aside.
Right off the bat.
Like,
no.
We make sure that we get it at least like a base amount.
A foundation.
And get it to grow too.
Correct.
Wow, that is smart.
Correct.
That is smart. I never really thought about
that. Right,
that.
because if you keep those 25K in the bank, it's not growing. It's not doing anything. It's doing something for the bank, but not for you.
Okay.
Now, if you grab the same, nice kid, 25K, I'm sorry, 10K. If you grab the same 10K and you allocate it to certain positions, your money is going to work for itself. For example, your emergency fund, even just to have one, obviously the goal is to accumulate 25K in savings, but you don't have that right now. So how would we accumulate that? Using the power of compound interest, right? So we would start with about personally, right, in that scenario. Of course, it depends on needs and wants and willingness. But I would tell you, out of those 10K, we are going to put 5 to 6K in an emergency fund with that it's receiving interest, minimum 5% interest, right? That just means that those 5 to 6K are growing with a 5% interest. Therefore, eventually, inevitably, because time never stops, you will have those 25K saved because of the power of compound interest, right? That leaves us with about 4 to 5K left, right? I personally would split up those two, right? So it would be what, 2.5K in each account. I would do 2.5K in your short-term savings account, 2.5K in your long-term savings account. Why? Because most people are going to want to be like, I just want to invest it all in once and I want to get a return. And I want you to double it in a year. Like, but what about your foundation? Keep in mind, this is only the beginning, right? Your foundation. So the 5K we split into 2.5, 2.5. Your short-term savings is going to be growing at about a 9% interest, and so is your investment and retirement accounts, right? So that if you do have to touch the money, you have your emergency fund and your short-term savings accessible to you, and you have your long-term savings that you don't want to touch, which is going to grow the most. But at least your savings are receiving interest compared to them not receiving anything anywhere else.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's consider now we have an emergency fund, we have a short-term bank account, we have a long-term bank account.
Not bank account, just
Or
account.
like account
Investment
somewhere.
Investment account.
Okay.
Yes.
Investment account.
Because you gotta get the bank out of here. Don't get with banks.
Oh, okay. All right. So now we have these three different pockets.
Yes.
Okay, of money. What's next? Like, how do I now get to a point where where I am, like you said, compounding the money that I already have,
Yeah.
and also have more money that I can use for my retirement. So I'm guessing I have to keep my emergency fund till the day I die, right? Because emergency can come any day.
Right.
I do need short-term ones because I might need new dentures.
Sure.
And some long-term ones because, I might need like a walking stick or like diabetic medicines.
Well, your long term is not so much walking stick diabetics. It's more like, oh, let me quit my job and not have to work again.
But I'm talking about when I'm already retired.
Right. Well, you're not going to retire without that long-term savings account, right? So like the people that are out here thinking like, oh, I'm going to retire with my Social Security number, like, or whatever the Social Security people are going to give me. I don't mean to be forward or rude, but like, no, you're not.
So what I've heard is that by the time at least I retire, there's not going to be enough money in the Social Security account to pay everybody that's currently alive their Social Security, whatever, pension or whatever.
Right. And so I'm just a person, right? And so I hear the same things that you do. But what it's coming down to, what the facts are showing is that no, by the time you and I get to retire, there is not going to be Social Security. And if there was, it's not going to be sustainable to live your life, right? What most people don't realize is that when Social Security was invented, when it became a thing, it was placed as a supplemental, not as a solution, right? And so if you can plan for your retirement here, and there, your Social Security adds to that. But Social Security was not created to live off of it. It just wasn't. It was created to give extra, not to live off of.
Oh.
And
I feel like a lot of people have thought of it as like, oh, this is my pension.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, those people are wrong. Wow. You will not. If you, I don't know how many old people are around you, right? Just to be forward, right? Elderly. I think that's the proper way. I don't know how many elderly people you have around you, but Right now, people in their 65s, they're receiving between 1,200 to $1,000 a month.
That's it.
That's it. That's it from Social Security.
Yeah, I don't think I can do
Imagine with inflation, what we're going to be receiving compared to the cost of our living. It's going to be impossible.
Right.
And so without that long-term savings, without that retirement plan, it's just not happening.
Right.
It's not happening. And even if you have $100,000, you put it in a bank, in a year from now, it's going to be $100,000 plus a dollar, right? You put it somewhere where it takes advantage of the power of compound interest, and you're going to have money growth. And that's what it comes down to. Saving money, but knowing how to save money so that it grows with the power of compound interest.
Okay. So say now that I put my money in these 3 different buckets, these buckets
they're
are
being
growing
funded and everything.
exponentially with compound interest. And how do I make sure that this money stays with me and I'm not like paying away this entire money in taxes, or also like after I pay a huge sum as my debt tax, that the rest of the money goes to my child or my wife, or domestic partner, whatever you want to call it, right? Like people that I care about, like my if my parents are still alive, so parents, and my previous generation, my current generation, and the generation that follows me. So there are a lot of times like you hear people talk about like, hey, let's create a trust, like revocable, irrevocable, whatever, make everybody beneficiary. That's what the Rockefellers did. You know what I'm saying?
But the Rockefellers.
Or you try different ways. You create LLCs and transfer money there, so you don't have to pay inheritance taxes. So according to you, let's start with like the most basic way to achieve all of this, and then maybe we can work in a little complicated way. But I would like to keep because not everybody wants to create a company or a trust or any of that, right?
Correct.
So what's like the most basic way to ensure that your money is yours? I'm guessing one of the things is a will, which you spoke about.
Yes.
Like, can you expand on that?
Yes. Okay. So when it comes to just making sure that like your money is going to be allocated to what you want it to be when you're not here, a will is definitely the way to go, right? A will protects you from laws of the government that don't necessarily benefit you, but oddly enough and shockingly enough, it also protects you from everybody else, right? It protects you from family that wants to claim your wealth that have no business in doing so. It allows you to dictate how things are going to go when you're no longer here. A will is very, very, very important to have. A trust, you mentioned. A trust is just as important to have because it expands on those benefits, right? And so when you hear people like, oh, like what if I create an LLC and then put this under that? And like that works great in the sense of like technically you don't own anything. Your company owns everything. But none of it matters if you're not properly informed, if you're not properly set up, right? And so when it comes to let's say, like you said, you have your 3 accounts, you're funding your 3 accounts, then what? Okay. It's my job to make sure that the money you make, you keep, right? Now, I can't make you any more money. I can make sure that the money you have is making money. I can make sure that the money you have is protected. I can make sure that the money you have is growing with the power of compound interest, but I can't just make you more money, right? That's on you, right? And so let's say you have your emergency fund, you have your short-term savings, you have your long-term savings, you have your income protected because your income is your biggest wealth building tool.
Bing.
And you have no debt. You are now free to be and live and do as you are and as you please. And if in doing that you come across more income, then and only then we can take that income and allocate it to where it's going to benefit you, right? Things like, things like educating yourself on how money really works, right? And you'll be able to pull up my one of my websites in the sense of focusing on education. Before I service anyone, I want to make sure that they're educated and that they understand how money works. And so, yeah, I can set you up properly, but then what? You can make all the money you want, but it comes down to where you put it, right? The high cost of waiting to invest, like I said earlier, time is time and it never stops going. Not only that, but paying yourself first. We've already set that standard. We've already set the foundation. But if you're making more money, which you've made your job to do, then why not pay yourself more? Right? And then being able to understand the rule of 72. Yes, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, which is fantastic because it's better than 0 times 0. But imagine if you could multiply 5 times 5 or 6 times 6 instead of 2 times 2, right? So the being able to put your money in a place where it grows using the rule of 72 really makes that much of a difference. And then, of course, the power of compound interest. I've been talking about this whole entire time, right? I can help you in the sense of helping you put your money in the right places so your money makes money. But you are in charge of making you money nowadays. Now, let's say you start, you get what is, and yeah, you'll see the free digital group. Go on the website, click on it, play around with it. And I'm talking to all of you guys, like go on there, explore, learn things, shoot me an email or a text with questions you might have, because there's so many things that this website and this book really educates you on. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to your actions, right? Now, let's say that, like you said earlier, well, what if I start just making, like, once I have these 3 accounts, then what? Then we can get into what I call, fun investment, right? Fun investing. You already have your emergency fund funded. You're continuously funding your short term and you're continuously funding your long term. And then you just happen to come across another big lump sum of money. Let's allocate it to where you're building yourself another source of income. Whether you take advantage of that source of income now or you take advantage of that source of income when you retire, that's on you, right? And this is a subject that we didn't touch on the first time in the first video this season. But retirement looks different for everyone. For me personally, I'm trying to retire by the time I'm 47 to 48. Your girl, I'm gonna be retired. But
you got like 47 years to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, my friends, the reality of the fact is I don't, and I recognize that, and so for me, retirement, like, for example, let me ask you, when I say retirement, what do you think of?
Like the age or?
Sure. Age, what it means, what it's like to have
like
it.
60, 65 is what I'm looking at. I think because I have businesses, I would probably never retire in like the traditional sense.
And you just exactly proved my point.
I would delegate most of the tasks.
I love it.
I would get other people to continue my businesses and let my money make more money. But I don't know if I'm like if I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna shut down this business and no longer work on it.
And that's what it comes down to.
Okay.
For me, retirement does not mean shutting down, like I'm done, like I'm just gonna sit on my porch. Like that's your average person that started a little later, and so they have no other choice but to retire at 65. The people that take advantage and that take initiative in planning for their future, learning about how to plan their finances, their retirement looks different. For example, me, I am trying to retire by the time I'm 47. However, for me, retirement isn't quitting everything. For me, retirement means not having to depend on a job, my family, or the government. Now, whether I choose to go make money some other way, that's my choice. I don't depend on that. Therefore, I can still be retired and still be making income, or be retired and be doing something that brings me passion. And because it brings me passion, inevitably it brings me income, right? And so that's kind of what it comes down to. Retirement it just looks different for everybody. So the earlier you start, the earlier you give yourself the freedom to do as you please and not as you have to.
Okay.
That's what it comes down to in the sense of how it all works, right? We want to build as many income receiving strategies so that one day we can retire. So that if we choose to go be nomads and hippies with, arts and crafts and all of that fun stuff, we have multiple sources of income that can sustain that lifestyle so that our projects, if they bring income or if they don't, it doesn't matter, right?
So according to you, what would be like a safe number of different sources of income? So
you said the word safe, and so I'm like, well,
so like what would be like baseline? Like you need to have at least 3 different sources of income
sure.
or whatever.
So
what's your baseline? What's your ideal?
That everybody needs to have, right? And your question goes back to my statement. It's your job to make you money. It's my job to make sure you keep it, right? So everybody needs to have Roth IRA. Everybody needs to have an IRA, an individual retirement account. Everyone. Because it's your job to become wealthy, but if you fail at your job, then I won't. Type situation, okay? Roth IRA. Everybody needs to have, mutual funds. I don't know if you know what a mutual fund is, but it's just another investment vehicle that's going to provide, 1, interest, and 2, income.
Okay.
Right? Certain individuals, right? My people that are 45 and up. If you have the income and you have the foundation, you can look into other sources of retirement income or just income in general. Right. At that moment, I would talk about, being able to talk about annuities and other kinds of retirement income providing vehicles, right? Managed investments. Then you have your super duper wealthy people that have a higher risk tolerance because they have more money, less, I want to say, obligations, and therefore they have more and bigger of a disposable income bracket, right? And so they can invest their money in other things and in different things. And so, yeah, we talk about things like, a lot of people come to me and they're like, Danny, what do you think about real estate? I love real estate. I think it's a beautiful industry, but is it secure? Is it liquidable? How fast can you liquidate your real estate? You cannot retire on the hopes that you're going to sell this home at one day. You can't,
Wow. So I understand the liquid part of
Liquidity.
it, which is very, very, very interesting. I never thought of it like, hey, what if I'm sitting on maybe $500,000 worth of house?
Yeah, but what if nobody wants to buy your house
right now? Yeah. So what do you think about gold, which is at least
we're talking about commodities now.
Yeah, for me as an Indian, buying gold has been something that we've been doing for generations.
Yeah.
as a way to park money. Like you could buy gold biscuits, which essentially is essentially pure gold.
Yeah.
Right. Or like if you were back in the day Dutch, you would buy Krugerrands or something, essentially gold coins or whatever.
Yeah.
But saving money in a commodity that can be liquidated. Like you could go to a pawn shop and be like, hey, can I replace this for money? You may not get the exact value, the market value.
Yeah.
You can still liquidate it immediately.
For sure.
Or
Well,
stocks, bonds,
stocks and bonds are great.
right? EFTs, like all these sort of like index funds, and you said mutual funds as well.
Mutual funds.
So like funds, that would also be like a good place to park your money rather than a house.
Yes.
Okay.
In the sense of once you have your foundation, and I think it's really important for me to make sure I get the point across. Without your foundation, everything else is
fair
in the air, right? Once you have your foundation and you have the ability to look at other investment options, what you really want to focus on is diversification. You want to be diverse, right? This is where you hear, don't put your eggs in one basket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes and no, right? Because you want to be diverse. You want to be able to, put in and take out here and there, especially if you have the income to do so. But that's what it comes down to. If you have the income to do so, if you have the sustainability to do so, but without those things, you're playing with your money, you're gambling, right? So once the foundation is set, commodities are great in the sense of it's worth something. The thing about commodities is what gives them value is the person you're selling them to. And so the value shifts up and down. They're not secure, right? Because let's say in an extreme example, gold is not going to feed your family. If it really came down to it, it's not. Like if it really came down to it, people aren't going to want to trade you gold for something else, because if gold is not worth what it needs to be worth, then you're just going to be like, oh, that's not what I need. I'm looking for this, right? Compared to having securities in a secured, like regulated industry, right? So you want to have your foundation, but then you come across gold, commodities. They're extra investment options. They shouldn't be the whole entire foundation. Same with real estate. If you have a foundation, being able to invest in buying and flipping homes, do it, because there is money in doing that, but make sure that you're going to be good anyway.
Okay. If we were to decide, talk about the chronological order in how we should start investing. So I know we spoke about baseline as like, make sure you get all your insurances in check, right? And then make sure you get your accounts, like your
basic
accounts,
investment accounts,
right? In check. Okay. So now I want to start investing my money, and I want the money to grow, right? So in what order should I grow in terms of say equity, in terms of funds, in terms of commodities, in terms of real estate, in terms of like in which order based on my growth? So say, for example, I am growing every year. So I'm making $100,000 one year, then the next year I'm making 120, 140, 160. So let's say I have a steady growth. And with this practice of me trying to save money, and I'm trying to, grow my money, decide my my retirement, all of it, right? So now I'm like financially educated that I should be doing this. So which order should I go in is what I'm trying to figure out, right? Like after the basics, right? 3 accounts and all of that, hopefully debt free. Right. And that's where I'm like baseline. What would be my first investment? What would be my second? What would be my third?
So that's a great question, because at the end of the day, it comes down to once you have your foundation set, everything else comes based off of you. Your risk tolerance, your return tolerance, what it is that you want to achieve, right? Because if you have your income protected, you have your short-term savings being funded, and you have your retirement account being funded, your foundation is set. Therefore, everything else you do comes down to your discretion as an individual.
But what should I pick is my question. You're the financial advisor. Advise me. Advise me as to what's my first step.
Okay, so
my good foundation.
After your good foundation, let's look at things like liquidity, right?
Okay.
What if you're wanting to invest in other things? Why?
Because I want my money to grow.
Because you want your money to grow, right? How fast do you want your money to grow, and how fast do you want access to that money that's growing is what it comes down to, right?
Let's say average. I want it to grow average. I don't need the money right now.
Okay.
Because let's just say it's my age. I'm relatively young. I don't need the retirement money
Right,
now.
because you already have that foundation.
I still have, yes, I have the foundation
All,
set, and I have
it's
income
important,
coming.
right? And so once you have that foundation set, there are certain rules that you can maximize your foundation. So if you do get extra income, you want to maximize that foundation, make it solid.
Okay.
And then you have more income coming. Then it really just comes down to your goals as an individual. Let's say that you are someone after they set their foundation, you're someone that has always dreamed of living at a bunch of different places. If you have the income and you have the foundation, why not go ahead and invest in real estate? Flip houses, do the whole renters thing, whatever it is that you choose, right? It's up to you.
So what if, let's just put it this way. I'm not an avid traveler, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like stuck to where I am. But I want to see my money grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to enjoy, say, instead of going out and having sushi, I want to have caviar, right? So I need a bigger credit limit or whatever, right? So real estate might be one of them, but it requires like a huge down payment and all of that, right? But I would also feel that is something that's like on the higher spectrum of like an advanced level of trying to grow my money.
And so see, by you telling me that, by us having that conversation, we can shift, because now I know that that's not what you're interested in. That's not what you want to invest your money in. At the end of the day, your money is your money. You can invest it however you want. Sure, once we set your foundation, which is the most important thing, after your foundation, you can still invest your money in whatever it is you want. It's my job to get to understand what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with, because the options are out there. But you as an individual are different as my next client. My next client could be all for real estate.
Right.
Because they have their foundation.
Okay.
But you as an individual, personally, that's not what you're looking for. So it's my job to figure out what it is that you're looking for, and then what we're going to do and how we're going to move onward from there.
So like we said, real estate might not be
Right.
my first option. So based on the information you have now, what do you think my first option should be?
Well, so based off the information I have now, you're telling me that your culture, works a lot with commodities. And so at the end of the day, anything you invest in is still going to be an investment, which is why your foundation is so important. Outside of your investment, outside of your foundation, any kind of investment you do is going to be somewhat of a gamble, right?
Okay.
Now, how comfortable are you outside of your foundation? How comfortable are you with the risk factor of this gamble? Things like commodities. Commodities are great to have: gold, diamond, jewelry. But the thing about commodity is that they go up in value, and then they go completely down in value based off how the economy is doing. And so you have to be able to be okay with that kind of diversity, because anything outside of your foundation is just pure investments in the sense of, okay, if I put this amount in, what am I going to be getting out? And so that's where you have things like annuities, you have things like managed investments, you have things like stocks and bonds, individual ones, right? Because mutual funds are a fund that can be filled with stocks and bonds,
Right.
And so you really just have more options to expand. If you already have your foundation, which we've talked about what that consists of, and then you want to invest in business and you want to open a business, that's an investment on its own. You want to buy a house and rent it out, that's an investment on its own. You want to buy gold, save it until it grows in value, that's an investment on its own. But that all comes down to very personally how you choose. I can't tell you what to do with your money. I can inform you what it's going to do, but at the end of the day, you're going to do what you're going to do regardless of me.
Okay, fair. So if there was like one advice that you could give me, based on everything you just heard, in like the previous episode and this episode based on all the math around. If there was one piece of advice that you could give me, apart from make sure you send me an email, call me for financial advice. If there's anything else that could benefit me.
If there was one piece of advice I could really just give people out there is get out there, ask questions, become aware, become educated on what your options are, and really understand the topic of diversification. You have to be prepared in all of the scenarios, not just the ideal scenario that you've created in your mind, right? And so my best advice is just to get educated.
Okay.
Get educated and understand what mutual funds are. A lot of people don't get it, and a lot of people that are in my industry that do get it, they underplay it because it doesn't make them money.
Okay.
Right. And so understand what mutual funds are and the diversification that comes behind them, and just your foundation, man. Your foundation is everything, like it is for anything else. Like your foundation, man, it makes a difference. So get out there, get educated, ask questions. And if you want to really just simmer down to one specific question because you're impatient and you don't, process it or whatever, find out what mutual funds are. Find out what mutual funds are. Find out what the power of compound interest is and how it can benefit you. And plan for your retirement, man, because the only two things are going to happen. You're either going to pass away too soon or you're going to be alive way too long. And so you want to make sure you take care of both scenarios to your best liking.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I guess are you ready to land this plane? Hey, ready to eat. All right. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast, and we learned so much today. Thank you so much, Daniela, for
It's always a pleasure to be here.
helping us out, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people learned a lot of things from this episode. So
I hope so, man. I hope so.
thank you so much, and we would love to have you again. All right.